Hello, and thank you for joining us. President Trump said he is very disappointed with the ongoing Russian attacks in Ukraine as his administration works towards securing a deal to end the more than 3-year war. In the Oval Office, President Trump was pressed by CBS News chief White House correspondent Nancy Cortez over Russian President Vladimir Putin's unwillingness so far to reach a peace agreement.
You've always said that the war never would have started.
Would have never happened, and it didn't happen.
And yet he doesn't seem willing to do anything that you want him to do. Do you still believe that he wouldn't have launched the war?
No, we would have never had a war. We would have never had a war if I were president.
The president made those remarks after a swearing-in ceremony for the new interim U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, former Fox News host Janine Piiro. President Trump also announced a new round of pardons Wednesday, including for former New York Republican Congressman Michael Grimm. He also commuted the sentence of a former Chicago gang leader. And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced a new policy restricting visas for foreign nationals who the U.S. determines are censoring what Americans say online. We have team coverage on these stories. Senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang and Justice Department correspondent Scott MacFarlane both join us now from Washington. Weijia, let's start with you. What are you learning about the president's frustrations over the war in Ukraine?
Well, Lindsay, President Trump was very clear about how he felt about the fact that Russia continues to attack Ukraine. You heard it when you played a clip from the Oval Office. Of course, our colleague Nancy Cortez asked him several questions about Russia, one of them being whether he thinks Putin even wants to end the war anymore. And the president responded, we'll know in 2 weeks. But interestingly, Lindsay, it was at the end of April when another reporter asked if the president trusts Putin. And he said, we'll know in 2 weeks. So it may be a new-ish timeline this time around, but it is something that he has said before. And, he has not put any real pressure on Putin. And when asked why not, and of course that would be another round of sanctions, secondary sanctions on any country that continues to do work with Russia, the president actually said he thought he was close to a deal, and so he didn't want to jeopardize that in any way. And finally, Lindsay, it's notable that the president was asked if he plans to meet with Putin and Zelensky in Geneva, and he said if it's necessary, he would consider that. But we really don't have any significant movement on that. It's something that he has toyed with before as well.
Okay, and the president addressed his ongoing legal fight with Harvard University and his attempts to restrict the school's ability to enroll international students. What did he say?
Well, he says he wants the lists, which is something that the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem also said. They want reporting of all foreign students. They want to know the profile. They want to know any protest activity. And the president also floated a somewhat new idea saying that schools should cap the acceptance rate of international students at 15%. At Harvard, as an example, it hovers around 30%, but the president said it should be lower than that to allow more American students into the schools here. But of course, we've heard from several professors, not only at Harvard, but elsewhere as well, who say it's a very slippery slope if you allow the government to dictate anything when it comes to private institutions. First, they'll be talking about who's allowed to attend. Next, they'll be talking about who and what they can teach. And so obviously, schools are pushing back against any sort of input like that from the administration.
President Trump also said he's considering pardons for the men charged with planning to kidnap Michigan Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer in 2020. What did he say about that case?
Well, he said that he is taking a look at it, and this comes after the new pardon attorney over at the DOJ said the same thing. And the president elaborated a little bit. He said he did watch the trial, and it looked to me like somewhat of a, quote, railroad job. I'll be honest with you, the president said. It looked to me like some people said some stupid things. He didn't offer any timeline, Lindsay, for when he might make a decision about pardoning those 6 defendants.
Okay, Weijia Jiang, thank you so much. Let's bring in Justice Department correspondent Scott MacFarlane. So, Scott, what should we know about President Trump's flurry of pardons and how he's making these decisions, specifically when it comes to pardon attorney Ed Martin's role as well?
A few differentiating things about this wave of pardons. First of all, that it's happening so early in a presidential term. That's noteworthy. But in so many of these cases, Lindsay, the pardons are happening outside the traditional historic pardon system. As it has been for so long, a pardon applicant does that. He or she applies, has to pay restitution, show remorse, have exhausted their appeals, have served some of their time. These names in front of you, they're a little bit different. A CBS News review did not find a pardon application pending for Scott Jenkins, the former Virginia sheriff who was convicted of taking bribes on the job, who hadn't even started serving his sentence. He was supposed to serve it 24 hours after he got the pardon. Michael Grimm, the former New York congressman from Staten Island, you see there. No review shows any pardon application by Grimm, who was released from prison back in 2016. Then there's the matter of Todd and Julie Chrisley, the reality TV stars convicted of fraud and convicted of tax evasion, Lindsay. Just a little bit different than you'd expect from a pardon revelation. There was a social media video posted by a White House staffer of the president calling the Chrisley's daughter to announce the pardon was forthcoming, a little showmanship there. And the Chrisley's daughter, it's worth reaffirming, was a speaker at last year's Republican National Convention.
And a strong rebuke of Democrats in her speech there. You spoke to the outgoing chief of Capitol Police in an exclusive interview. He spoke to you bluntly about the president's pardoning of January 6 rioters. Let's listen.
You can be involved in some massive public disorder event, and that you could have a politician later on decide that, well, I liked what this side was doing, so we're going to pardon all these people. It was, I think, a slap in the face to every police officer that was here.
Tell us more about your conversation with Thomas Manger.
He retires Friday from this position. He was brought in after the January 6th insurrection to stabilize a traumatized department. He says those pardons, though, have reinstituted problems with morale. Morale problems were transcended in the agency after a riotous attack bloodied and beat officers and led to officer suicides. Thomas Manger helped secure a bigger budget for the police department to extend their reach to protect against the tens of thousands of threat investigations that have been launched over the last few years. But he also has helped replace some of the manpower, restore some of the staff to the very short on staff department post-January 6th. It was a reclamation mission, and he has gotten a lot of credit from members of Congress for doing that job for nearly 4 years now.
Scott, interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Janine Piiro, was sworn in today. Walk us through her plans as the top D.C. prosecutor.
A ceremonial swearing in is not something every U.S. attorney gets, but Janine Piiro isn't your average U.S. attorney. She is a celebrity, had her own judge-syndicated TV show, then became a fixture on Fox News. She's already been on the job a few days, and she's leading that investigation into the murders of those 2 Israeli embassy officials last Thursday. She has told staff in meetings that she thinks violent crime rates can drop in D.C., that the agency can be more focused on those things that you see every day as a city dweller. You know, the old broken window philosophy. Let's make sure quality of life is restored in the city. But she's also coming in after a very polarizing figure. Ed Martin, the former U.S. attorney in the first few months of the administration, was so controversial, the Republicans blocked him from confirmation. That is a rarity in the Trump administration.
Scott MacFarlane, thank you.